Admiral Elena Rodriguez stared at the holographic display showing what remained of the Terran Third Fleet. 43 ships out of 200. The rest were either scrap metal floating in the void or had never made it out of the Kepler system at all. 3 months ago, humanity had received its first communication from beyond their solar system. 3 days ago, they'd been dragged into a war that had been raging since before humans had discovered fire. The bridge of the TSS Defiance buzzed with quiet efficiency. Her crew worked their stations with the kind of focused intensity that came from knowing they were utterly outclassed by everything around them. Elena had served in the Solar Navy for 22 years, had fought in the Mars Rebellion and commanded ships during the asteroid belt conflicts, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from the Galactic Council," reported Commander Zhang from the communications station. His voice carried that careful neutrality that military personnel used when delivering news they knew wouldn't be well received. "Put it through," Elena said, straightening in her command chair. The main display shifted to show a being that looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a chandelier. High Chancellor Vextai of the Ethereal Collective, current leader of the Galactic Council's war effort. Their species had evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago, existing as pure thought and energy, but they still maintained enough physical presence to interact with lesser species. "Admiral Rodriguez," Vextai's voice resonated through the bridge, each word accompanied by harmonious chimes. "I trust you understand the gravity of your species' situation." Elena kept her expression neutral. "We understand we're at war, Chancellor. Our intel briefings have been thorough." "Have they indeed?" The alien's form shifted, patterns of light dancing through its translucent body. "Then, you understand that this conflict has lasted 3,000 of your years. The Krillian Empire controls 40% of the galaxy's habitable systems. The Zephyrian Coalition holds 30%. The remaining 30% belongs to various other factions, including ourselves. All of us possess technology that your species would consider miraculous. The Krillians can manipulate matter at the atomic level with their void spheres. The Zephyrians have mastered energy manipulation to such a degree that they can create artificial stars. We ourselves have transcended the limitations of physical existence." "So I've been told," Elena replied. "What's your point, Chancellor?" The question seemed to surprise the alien. There was a moment of silence before Vextai continued. "My point, Admiral, is that your species possesses none of these advantages. Your ships are constructed of crude metals and ceramics. Your weapons are chemically propelled projectiles and primitive energy beams. Your fastest vessels can barely achieve 50% of light speed. By any reasonable metric, humanity should not exist in this conflict. You should have been eliminated the moment you entered Krillian space." Elena felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice level. "Yet here we are." "Yes," Vextai agreed, and there was something in the alien's tone that Elena couldn't quite identify. "Here you are." Which brings me to why I'm speaking with you directly. 3 days ago, your Third Fleet engaged a Krillian battle group near the Threshold Nebula. Preliminary reports suggested this would be humanity's final contribution to the war effort. The Krillians deployed a full squadron of Annihilator-class dreadnoughts. Each of these vessels is 12 kilometers long and equipped with weapons capable of cracking small moons. Elena remembered. She'd been there, watching her ships get torn apart by weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. The Krillian ships had moved through space like living things, their hulls shifting and flowing, adapting to whatever the humans threw at them. It should have been a massacre. It was supposed to be a massacre. But something unexpected occurred, Vextai continued. Rather than engaging in traditional combat, your forces did something that confused our analysts. Your Captain Martinez of the TSS Thunderbolt disabled his ship's artificial gravity and used his vessel's rotation to create a spinning weapons platform. Your Commander Sullivan filled a cargo bay with industrial mining charges and detonated them inside a Krillian vessel after ramming it. Your Captain Peters somehow managed to use his ship's waste recycling system to create a cloud of frozen organic matter that interfered with Krillian sensors. "Improvisation," Elena said simply. "When your equipment isn't up to the task, you adapt." Adaptation. The word seemed to echo strangely when Vextai said it. Yes, that appears to be the correct term. The result of this adaptation was that a force that should have been completely annihilated instead managed to destroy 4 Annihilator-class dreadnoughts and force the remainder to retreat. This has never happened before in 3,000 years of warfare. Elena felt a small surge of pride, but she kept it off her face. The cost had been horrific. 700 good sailors had died in those few hours of combat. But they'd proven that humanity couldn't simply be brushed aside. The Krillian response has been significant, Vextai continued. They've recalled 12 battle fleets from other fronts. That's approximately 6,000 vessels, Admiral. They're organizing a massive offensive specifically designed to eliminate humanity from this conflict permanently. The bridge fell silent. 6,000 ships. Elena did the math in her head. Even if every human vessel in space joined the fight, they'd be outnumbered 50 to 1. And that was assuming they could somehow match Krillian technology, which they demonstrably could not. When? Elena asked. 6 standard days. They're gathering at the Maelstrom Gate. The Galactic Council has decided to evacuate human space and allow the Krillians to resolve this issue. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. You're abandoning us. We are being practical, Vextai replied, and, for the first time, there seemed to be actual emotion in the alien's voice. Admiral, your species has been at war for 72 hours. In that time, you've demonstrated courage and ingenuity that has impressed many of us. But, courage cannot overcome the fundamental mathematics of this situation. The Krillian Empire has existed for over 2 million years. They have perfected warfare to a degree that transcends anything your species can comprehend. To continue supporting humanity would be to invite the total destruction of the Galactic Council itself. Elena looked around her bridge. Her crew was listening, but their faces showed no panic, no despair. Instead, she saw something that made her feel proud to be human. She saw determination. The kind of stubborn, unreasonable determination that had driven her species to cross oceans in wooden ships, to climb mountains because they were there, to reach for the stars despite having no good reason to believe they could succeed. Chancellor, Elena said finally, I appreciate your honesty. But, I think you're operating under a fundamental misunderstanding about my species. Which is? You keep talking about mathematics and logic and reasonable expectations. You seem to think that because something is impossible, humans will accept that it's impossible. But, here's the thing about humanity, we're not very good at accepting impossibility. We tend to take it as a challenge. Vextai's form flickered, patterns of light shifting more rapidly. Admiral, I fear you don't understand the magnitude of what's coming. This isn't bravery we're discussing. This is extinction. Elena stood up from her command chair. Commander Zhang, open a channel to all human vessels in the fleet. Channel open, Admiral. Elena looked directly into the camera that would carry her words to every human ship in space. This is Admiral Rodriguez. By now, you've all heard the situation. The Galactic Council is withdrawing support. In 6 days, the Krillian Empire will arrive with 6,000 ships to finish what they started. The smart play would be to retreat to Earth, hope they don't follow us, and, maybe buy our homeworld a few more years of existence. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. But, since when have humans ever made the smart play? I'm not ordering anyone to stay. This isn't about duty or honor or any of the noble words we use to dress up ugly necessities. This is about the simple fact that if we run now, we'll spend the rest of our lives, however long they might be, knowing that we let fear make our choices for us. And that's not who we are. Elena could see her reflection in the camera lens, and she realized she was smiling. Not a happy smile, but the kind of smile her grandmother used to get when she was about to do something completely unreasonable. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our 43 ships and our ridiculous human stubbornness, and we're going to remind 6,000 Krillian vessels why you never, ever corner a species that evolved from persistence hunters. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten the survival of a species that once killed massive predators by chasing them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We're going to demonstrate why it was a mistake to pick a fight with the descendants of the people who looked at the vast emptiness of space and decided it needed human footprints. She turned back to Vextai. Chancellor, I want you to tell the Galactic Council something. Tell them that if they want to see what impossible looks like, they should pay attention to what happens at the Maelstrom Gate in 6 days. Because humanity is about to rewrite the definition of warfare, and, when we're done, your 3,000-year stalemate is going to look like a gentle disagreement between neighbors. The alien's form pulsed with what might have been confusion or concern. Admiral Rodriguez, surely you cannot believe that 43 vessels can stand against the full might of the Krillian war machine. Elena's smile widened. Chancellor, you're absolutely right. 43 ships can't win this fight. But, you're forgetting something important. Which is? We're not just 43 ships. We're human. And humans don't fight fair. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Commander Zhang was the first to speak. Admiral, what are your orders? Elena walked over to the tactical display, studying the star charts that showed the positions of human and allied forces throughout this sector of the galaxy. 43 ships against 6,000. Any rational analysis would conclude it was hopeless. But Elena had never been accused of being entirely rational. Signal all ship commanders. We're convening a war council in 2 hours. And, Commander? Send a message back to Earth, highest priority. Tell them we need every crazy idea, every impossible strategy, every bit of insane human innovation they can come up with. We've got 6 days to figure out how to win a war that can't be won. Yes, Admiral. And, the Galactic Council? Elena looked at the star charts again, her mind already beginning to work on the problem. Somewhere in the impossible mathematics of this situation, there had to be an answer. There always was. Humans had a gift for finding solutions in the places where logic insisted no solutions could exist. Let them watch, she said. Let them see what happens when you try to eliminate a species that spent its entire evolutionary history refusing to accept that anything is truly impossible. Because in 6 days, we're going to teach the galaxy that sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate the species that looked at the vast hostile universe and decided to make it their home. The War Council convened aboard the TSS Defiance in what had once been the ship's main cargo bay. Admiral Rodriguez had ordered all the bulkheads between the cargo sections removed, creating a space large enough to accommodate holographic displays showing the tactical situation from every angle. 43 ship commanders attended either in person or via hologram, their faces showing the kind of grim determination that Elena had come to recognize as uniquely human. Captain Sarah Chen of the TSS Relentless was the first to speak after Elena's briefing. Admiral, I've run the numbers 17 different ways. Even if we assume optimal performance and perfect coordination, we're looking at a 98% probability of total fleet destruction within the first hour of engagement. 98%, repeated Captain Martinez, whose ship had survived the Threshold Nebula engagement through what any reasonable observer would call a miracle. Those are almost comfortable odds for us. Remember when the odds were 99.5% against successfully colonizing Mars? A few chuckles echoed through the cargo bay. Elena appreciated the attempt at humor, but she knew that beneath the jokes, every person in this room was calculating the likelihood of seeing home again. The math was unforgiving. The question isn't whether we can win a conventional engagement, Elena said, calling up a 3-dimensional display of the Maelstrom Gate. The question is whether there's an unconventional engagement that we can win. Commander Park, what's the status on our intelligence regarding Krillian fleet composition? Commander David Park, intelligence officer for the human fleet, activated his own display. The Krillians are bringing everything they have, Admiral. 12 battle fleets, each centered around a Worldbreaker-class command ship. These vessels are essentially mobile planets, 40 kilometers in diameter, carrying populations in the millions. Each Worldbreaker is protected by approximately 500 support vessels ranging from escort frigates to heavy battlecruisers. Elena studied the display. The Krillian ships look like living organisms, smooth, flowing lines that seem to pulse with their own internal light. Their technology was based on something the Galactic Council called biomechanical fusion, machines that were also alive, capable of adapting and healing in ways that made traditional warfare strategies obsolete. Their weakness? Elena asked. Commander Park shook his head. That's the problem, Admiral. They don't appear to have any conventional weaknesses. Their hulls regenerate damage faster than our weapons can inflict it. Their shields adapt to whatever energy frequencies we use. Their weapons can reconfigure themselves in real time to exploit weaknesses in our defenses. The only reason we succeeded at Threshold Nebula was because we did things so far outside normal tactical doctrine that their adaptive systems couldn't respond fast enough. Captain Morrison of the TSS Ironclad leaned forward. What kind of things? I mean, specifically. If we're going to base our strategy on being unpredictable, we need to understand what unpredictable looks like. Elena pulled up the battle recordings from Threshold Nebula. The holographic display showed the engagement from multiple angles, highlighting the moments where human crews had done the impossible. Captain Martinez, walk us through your gravity maneuver. Martinez stood up, moving to the center of the display. It was actually my engineer's idea. Chief Petty Officer Williams pointed out that our artificial gravity generators create localized gravitational fields. When I disabled the ship's main gravity, all the internal gravity was still being generated by individual compartment systems. Williams suggested we could use the ship's rotation to turn those local fields into a kind of gravitational slingshot. The display showed the TSS Thunderbolt spinning like a top, its weapons firing not in straight lines but in complex curved trajectories that bent around the ship's own gravitational field. The Krillian ship's adaptive defenses are designed to counter linear attacks, Martinez continued. But our projectiles were following gravitational curves that changed as our rotation speed increased. Their defense systems couldn't calculate the trajectory fast enough to intercept. Captain Sullivan activated her own section of the display. My ramming attack worked for a similar reason. The Krillians expect weapons to be fired from outside their defensive perimeter. They weren't prepared for a ship to ram them and, then, detonate explosives from inside their hull. Their adaptive armor is designed to keep things out, not to contain explosions from within. Elena nodded, her mind beginning to see patterns. What about Captain Peters' waste recycling gambit? Peters, a quiet man who commanded the TSS Endurance, looked uncomfortable being the center of attention. It wasn't really planned, Admiral. We'd taken heavy damage to our main sensor array, and I was trying to create a smokescreen so we could withdraw. Our waste recycling system produces a mixture of organic compounds that we normally compress into disposal blocks. I thought if we vented it into space, it might interfere with their targeting systems. But it did more than that, Elena observed, studying the battle data. The organic compounds froze in the vacuum and created a cloud of particles that not only blocked their sensors but also absorbed their energy weapons. Their biomechanical systems tried to analyze the cloud, thinking it was some kind of biological weapon, and wasted valuable processing cycles trying to adapt to a threat that wasn't actually threatening. The cargo bay fell silent as the implications sank in. Elena could see the idea forming in the minds of her commanders, the understanding that their greatest weakness might also be their greatest strength. The Krillians have built the perfect war machine, Elena said finally. A fleet that can adapt to any threat, overcome any defense, exploit any weakness. But there's one thing they haven't planned for. Which is? Captain Chen asked. Chaos. Pure, unreasonable, illogical chaos. Elena walked to the tactical display and began highlighting different sections of the Maelstrom Gate. Their entire philosophy is based on adaptation and optimization. They've spent 2 million years perfecting the art of war, creating systems that can respond to any rational threat. But what happens when you present them with threats that aren't rational? Commander Park leaned back in his chair. You're talking about deliberately using inferior tactics. Not inferior, Elena corrected. Impossible. I'm talking about using tactics that are so far outside the realm of logical warfare that their adaptive systems won't know how to respond. We're going to fight this battle using strategies that violate every principle of good military doctrine. Captain Morrison looked skeptical. Admiral, with all due respect, there's usually a good reason why military doctrine exists. Those principles were written in blood. You're absolutely right, Elena agreed. But those principles were written by humans, for fighting other humans. We're not fighting humans. We're fighting machines that think they've seen everything warfare has to offer. Our job is to show them that human illogic is more powerful than any logical system. She turned to her staff. Commander Zhang, I want you to contact every civilian ship in human space. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, pleasure craft, anything that can mount a weapon or carry a payload. We're going to need everything that flies. Admiral, Captain Chen interjected, civilian ships aren't equipped for combat. They'll be slaughtered. Not if they're not trying to fight, Elena replied. Commander Park, I need you to research every human military engagement from our pre-space era. I want examples of battles won through absolute refusal to follow conventional tactics. Thermopylae, Kenny, Normandy, the Battle of Midway. Every time humans won by doing something the enemy thought was impossible. She moved to the center of the display, looking at the Maelstrom Gate from every angle. The gate itself was a natural phenomenon, a gravitational anomaly that allowed faster-than-light travel between distant parts of the galaxy. It was also the only way in or out of this entire sector of space. "Here's what we're going to do," Elena announced. "We're going to turn the Maelstrom Gate into the largest improvised weapon in galactic history." The cargo bay erupted in conversation as commanders began asking questions, raising objections, demanding details. Elena let them talk for a moment, then raised her hand for silence. "I know it sounds insane. I know every regulation in the book says what I'm proposing is impossible. But think about this: 6 days ago, the galaxy thought humanity was a minor inconvenience that would be eliminated in hours. 3 days ago, we proved them wrong by doing the impossible at Threshold Nebula. Now they're sending 6,000 ships to make sure we don't do the impossible again." She smiled that same unreasonable smile from the bridge conference. "That tells me we're on the right track. The Krillians are scared. Not of our technology, they know they're superior. They're scared of our unpredictability. They're scared that we might do something so completely outside their understanding that their perfect adaptive systems won't be able to cope. And they're right to be scared." Captain Martinez stood up. "What do you need from us, Admiral? I need you to forget everything you know about proper military tactics. I need you to think like the humans who crossed oceans in ships that shouldn't have floated, who flew in machines that shouldn't have worked, who went to space in rockets that were basically controlled explosions. I need you to remember that humanity's greatest victory has always come from refusing to accept that victory was impossible." Elena activated a new display showing the current positions of all human vessels in space. 43 warships, scattered across a dozen star systems. Against any reasonable enemy, it would be pathetically inadequate. "We have 6 days to gather every human ship in space and turn them into the most unconventional fighting force the galaxy has ever seen. We're going to use garbage scows as missile platforms, mining ships as ramming vessels, and pleasure craft as decoy targets. We're going to fight this battle using tactics that will make military historians weep and enemy commanders question the fundamental nature of reality." She paused, looking around the cargo bay at the faces of her commanders. They looked back at her with expressions she recognized, the same expression her grandmother had worn when she'd enlisted in the Navy despite being told women couldn't handle combat. The same expression her father had worn when he'd volunteered for the first Mars mission despite a 90% casualty projection. "The Galactic Council thinks we're going to be eliminated in the first hour," Elena continued. "The Krillians think they're bringing enough force to crack a planet. They're both operating under the assumption that this will be a normal battle fought according to normal rules. Our job is to prove that humans don't fight normal battles, and we sure as hell don't follow normal rules." Captain Chen raised her hand. "Admiral, what's our ultimate objective? Even if we can confuse them temporarily, we're still vastly outnumbered. What's our endgame?" Elena looked at the tactical display one more time, her mind working through possibilities that any sane military planner would reject immediately. "Our endgame, Captain, is to win. Not to delay the inevitable, not to make a heroic last stand, not to die gloriously for the history books. We're going to win this fight by proving that 6,000 ships aren't enough when the other side refuses to play by the rules. We're going to show the galaxy that when you threaten humanity's survival, you're not just fighting our ships and weapons. You're fighting our imagination, our adaptability, and our absolute refusal to accept defeat." She turned to address the entire assembly. "In 6 days, the Krillian Empire is going to learn what the Martian rebels learned, what the asteroid belt pirates learned, what every enemy humanity has ever faced has learned. You can have better technology. You can have superior numbers. You can have every advantage that logic and reason can provide. But if you're fighting humans, none of that matters. Because humans don't fight with logic and reason. We fight with sheer, bloody-minded determination to survive, and we'll use anything from quantum physics to kitchen utensils to make that happen." The cargo bay fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. Elena could see her words taking root in the minds of her commanders, could see them beginning to think in the impossible terms that this battle would require. "Questions?" she asked. Captain Morrison raised his hand slowly. "Just one, Admiral. When this is over, and the historians try to figure out what happened here, what do we want them to say?" Elena considered the question. 6 days from now, they would either be dead or they would have accomplished something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. There wouldn't be much middle ground. I want them to say that when the Krillian Empire thought they could eliminate humanity with overwhelming force, they forgot one crucial fact about our species, she said finally. Humans don't just fight wars. We invent entirely new ways to fight wars. And, once we're done, the war isn't the same anymore. Nothing is. 3 days before the Krillian fleet was scheduled to arrive at the Maelstrom Gate, Elena Rodriguez stood in the cargo bay of a converted mining vessel called the Prosperity, watching what might have been the most unusual military planning session in galactic history. The ship's original purpose had been extracting rare minerals from asteroid fields, but, over the past 72 hours, it had been transformed into something that defied easy classification. The Prosperity's massive cargo holds had been filled with an assortment of materials that would have confused any traditional military observer. Thousands of tons of industrial mining explosives sat next to cargo containers filled with frozen organic waste from human colonies. Agricultural drones designed for crop maintenance had been fitted with improvised weapon systems. Even the ship's mining robots had been reprogrammed for combat applications that their original designers never could have imagined. Captain Maria Santos, the Prosperity's owner and commander, was explaining her modifications to a group of human naval officers who were trying very hard not to look skeptical. The beauty of a mining ship, Santos said, patting the bulkhead affectionately, is that it's designed to tear apart things that don't want to be torn apart. These industrial cutters can slice through asteroid rock like butter. I figure if they can handle solid rock, they ought to do interesting things to alien hull plating. Commander Zhang looked at the schematic Santos was displaying. Captain, these modifications are creative. But, how do you plan to get close enough to a Krillian vessel to use close-range mining equipment? Santos grinned. That's the beautiful part, Commander. Mining ships don't look like warships. Hell, they don't even look like ships half the time. To an enemy scanner, we're just another piece of space debris. By the time they figure out we're a threat, we'll be close enough to shake hands. Elena moved to another section of the cargo bay where Chief Petty Officer Williams from the TSS Thunderbolt was working with a team of civilian engineers. They were clustered around what appeared to be a standard cargo container, but Elena could see that it had been heavily modified. Chief, status report. Williams looked up from his work, his hands covered in grease and his face showing the kind of satisfied expression that engineers got when they'd solved an impossible problem. Admiral, I think we've figured out how to turn garbage into guided missiles. He activated a holographic display showing the container's internal modifications. Standard cargo containers are designed to be moved around by automated systems. They've got basic maneuvering thrusters and navigation computers. We've enhanced those systems and loaded each container with enough mining explosives to punch a hole through a battlecruiser's hull. Elena studied the display. How many of these can we deploy? Well, Admiral, that's where it gets interesting. Every civilian ship in human space uses these containers. Cargo haulers, colony ships, even passenger vessels. We've got approximately 50,000 containers in this sector alone. If we can modify even 10% of them. 5,000 improvised missiles, Elena said, beginning to see the scope of what her people were planning. Launched from civilian ships that don't look like military targets. Exactly, Williams confirmed. The Krillians will be expecting traditional missile attacks from military vessels. They won't be watching for cargo haulers dumping their loads and flying away. Elena moved through the cargo bay, observing dozens of similar modifications and improvisations. Agricultural ships had been fitted with crop dusters that could disperse clouds of metallic chaff to confuse enemy sensors. Passenger liners had been equipped with emergency escape pods loaded with recording devices that would transmit false signatures to make single ships appear to be entire fleets. Even luxury yachts had been converted into decoy command vessels, bristling with fake antenna arrays and electronic jammers. In the center of the cargo bay, Captain Chen was working with a mixed group of military and civilian personnel on what appeared to be the most ambitious modification of all. Elena approached their workstation and found them clustered around a holographic model of the Maelstrom Gate itself. Admiral, Captain Chen said when she noticed Elena's approach, we think we've found a way to weaponize the gate itself. Elena studied the model. The Maelstrom Gate was a naturally occurring gravitational anomaly, a point where spacetime was twisted into a configuration that allowed faster-than-light travel. Ships entering the gate at the correct angle and velocity would emerge from similar gates throughout the galaxy. It was stable, predictable, and absolutely essential for interstellar commerce and communication. Explain, Elena said. Dr. Patricia Kumar, a civilian physicist who'd been working on gate theory for most of her career, stepped forward. Admiral, the gate's stability depends on a very precise balance of gravitational forces. If that balance were disrupted, even temporarily, the results would be dramatic. Define dramatic. The gate would collapse into a localized black hole that would consume anything within approximately 1,000,000 kilometers before stabilizing into a new configuration. The process would release energy equivalent to a stellar explosion. Elena felt her breath catch. How long would the collapse take? Based on our calculations, approximately 47 minutes from initial disruption to complete collapse. Anything caught in the gate's event horizon during that time would be destroyed utterly. Captain Shen pointed to specific locations on the holographic model. The disruption would need to be precisely timed and positioned. We'd need to detonate nuclear charges at 7 specific coordinates around the gate's periphery. The timing would have to be perfect. We're talking about microsecond precision across distances measured in light minutes. Elena looked at the faces around the workstation. This would destroy the gate permanently. This sector would be cut off from the rest of the galaxy. For approximately 50 years, Dr. Kumar confirmed. The gravitational forces would eventually rebalance and create a new gate, but it would be decades before interstellar travel was possible again. Elena considered the implications. Cutting off this sector would trap not just the Krillian fleet, but also any human vessels in the area. It would mean isolation, possibly for the rest of their lives. But it would also eliminate the Krillian threat to Earth and the human colonies beyond this sector. Could we trigger this collapse after the Krillian fleet enters the gate's influence zone? Theoretically, yes, Dr. Kumar replied. But, Admiral, the variables involved are staggering. We'd need to coordinate 7 simultaneous nuclear detonations across a volume of space larger than most star systems. We'd need to account for gravitational interference from the Krillian fleet itself. And we'd need to do it all while under attack by 6,000 enemy vessels. Elena smiled. Dr. Kumar, you just described a typical Tuesday for humanity. We specialize in making impossible things work. She turned to address the entire cargo bay. People, listen up. I want status reports on all modifications, all improvisations, all completely insane ideas you've been working on. We've got 3 days to turn this collection of civilian vessels and military cast-offs into the most effective fighting force the galaxy has ever seen. The next several hours were a blur of technical briefings, tactical discussions, and the kind of creative problem-solving that happened when humans were faced with impossible odds. Elena moved from group to group, listening to proposals that ranged from brilliant to insane, often in the same sentence. Captain Morrison had figured out how to turn his ship's waste heat into a weapon by focusing it through modified sensor arrays. Captain Rodriguez, no relation to Elena, had developed a technique for using passenger shuttle engines as improvised ramming charges. Even the children aboard the civilian vessels had contributed, suggesting modifications to toy drones that could be used as reconnaissance platforms. As the briefings continued, Elena began to see the shape of their strategy emerging. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't traditional. It violated every principle of sound military doctrine. But it was undeniably human in its refusal to accept limitations. Admiral, Commander Zhang approached with a datapad showing the latest intelligence reports. We're receiving updates from our scout ships. The Krillian fleet is maintaining schedule. 12 battle fleets, approximately 6,000 vessels total. They're approaching the Maelstrom Gate in traditional formation, command ships at the center, escort vessels and protective screens. Elena studied the formation data. Traditional formation. That's interesting. Ma'am? Commander, the Krillians have adapted their technology to counter every known military strategy. But they're still using formation tactics that follow conventional doctrine. They're expecting a conventional battle. She turned back to the assembled crowd in the cargo bay. People, I want you to understand something. In 3 days, we're going to face an enemy that outnumbers us more than 100 to 1. They have better technology, better weapons, better defenses. By every reasonable measure, we should lose this fight in the first 10 minutes. The cargo bay fell silent, everyone listening intently. But we're not going to fight them reasonably. We're going to fight them the way humans have always fought when our survival was at stake. We're going to use every trick, every improvisation, every impossible idea we can think of. We're going to hit them with attacks they can't predict because those attacks don't make tactical sense. Elena walked to the center of the cargo bay, looking around at the faces of military officers and civilian volunteers who had committed themselves to an impossible battle. 3 days from now, the Krillian Empire is going to learn why you don't threaten a species that looks at the impossible and treats it as a starting point. They're going to discover that 6,000 ships aren't enough when the enemy refuses to follow the rules. And, when this is over, the galaxy is going to remember that humanity doesn't just survive impossible odds, we rewrite the definition of what's possible. Captain Santos raised her hand. Admiral, what if it doesn't work? What if all our modifications and improvisations aren't enough? Elena considered the question seriously. Then, we'll improvise something else. That's what humans do, Captain. We adapt. We overcome. We find ways to win that nobody else would even consider trying. And if our first impossible plan doesn't work, we'll try a second impossible plan, then a third, then as many as it takes. She looked around the cargo bay one more time, taking in the scene of humans turning mining equipment into weapons, civilian ships into warships, and abandoned cargo containers into guided missiles. The Krillians think they're bringing enough force to eliminate humanity from this war. What they don't understand is that they're not fighting our ships or our weapons. They're fighting our imagination. And human imagination, when it's focused on survival, is the most dangerous force in the universe. Elena moved toward the cargo bay exit, then paused. 3 days, people. 3 days to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate the species that conquered their homeworld by refusing to accept that anything was truly unconquerable. 3 days to prove that sometimes, the most dangerous enemy you can face is the one who doesn't know they're supposed to lose. As she left the cargo bay, Elena could hear the sound of her people returning to their work, the sound of humans doing what they did best, turning impossible circumstances into unlikely victories through sheer determination and creative stubbornness. In 3 days, the galaxy would see what that sounded like when amplified by the urgency of species survival. It was going to be interesting. Admiral Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the TSS Defiance, watching the sensor displays show the arrival of the Krillian fleet at the Maelstrom Gate. 6,000 vessels emerging from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their biomechanical hulls gleaming in the light of the system's binary stars. It was the largest concentration of military power the galaxy had seen in over 1,000 years. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Krillian command vessel, Commander Zhang reported from his station. They're demanding our immediate surrender. Put them through, Elena said, settling into her command chair. The main display shifted to show a being that looked like a cross between an insect and a machine. High Commander Zarethval of the Krillian Empire, their form encased in biomechanical armor that seemed to pulse with its own internal life. Humans, Zarethval's voice carried the harmonic undertones that indicated translation from the Krillian language. Your interference in this war ends now. You will power down your weapons, surrender your vessels, and prepare for relocation to designated containment worlds. Resistance will result in total extermination. Elena looked at the alien commander with the calm expression she'd worn when facing down pirates in the asteroid belt. Hi Commander, I appreciate the offer, but we'll have to decline. Humans have a policy against surrendering to forces that threaten our extinction. It's served us well throughout our history. Zarethval's form shifted, biomechanical components reconfiguring in what Elena interpreted as surprise. Admiral Rodriguez, you cannot believe that your primitive vessels can stand against the full might of the Krillian Empire. We have brought 12 battle fleets to ensure your elimination is swift and complete. I can see that, Elena replied. Quite impressive. But, you seem to be operating under a misunderstanding about my species. Which is? Elena smiled. You think this is going to be a battle between your 6,000 ships and our 43 ships. But, that's not what's happening here, High Commander. What's happening here is that 6,000 ships are about to be introduced to the human concept of total warfare. She nodded to Commander Zhang, who cut the transmission and opened a channel to all human vessels in the system. All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez. Execute Operation Chaos in 30 seconds. Remember, people, we're not trying to fight fair. We're trying to win. Elena watched the tactical display as human vessels throughout the system began implementing the most unconventional battle plan in galactic history. The official fleet of 43 warships was only a small part of what humanity had brought to this fight. The first phase began with Captain Santos and her converted mining vessels. The Prosperity and 17 other industrial ships had positioned themselves among the asteroid debris at the edge of the system, their hulls modified to match the electromagnetic signature of space rock. As the Krillian fleet moved toward the Maelstrom Gate in traditional formation, the mining ships activated their industrial cutting lasers. Elena watched the Krillian response with interest. The enemy vessel's adaptive defense systems immediately began analyzing the laser attacks, calculating shield configurations and defensive maneuvers. But the mining lasers weren't military weapons, they operated on frequencies and power levels that had never been used in combat. The Krillian systems spent precious processing cycles trying to adapt to threats that didn't follow conventional weapon parameters. Mining ships report successful hits on 3 escort vessels, Commander Zhang reported. Krillian formations are responding with confusion, Admiral. They're not sure what they're fighting. The second phase launched immediately afterward. Cargo haulers throughout the system began jettisoning their loads, thousands of modified containers that appeared on Krillian sensors as debris or ejected cargo. The enemy fleet's scanning systems flagged the containers as non-threatening and ignored them as their adaptive tactical computers focused on identifying and classifying the mining laser attacks. Elena counted down the seconds in her head. The modified containers were equipped with basic navigation systems and just enough fuel to make minor course corrections. They didn't look like missiles because they weren't designed to look like missiles. They were designed to look like exactly what they were, cargo containers drifting through space. At precisely the calculated moment, 5,000 containers activated their hidden payloads. Mining explosives that had been packed into standard shipping containers detonated throughout the Krillian formation, each explosion equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The enemy ship's shields were configured to stop energy weapons and military ordnance, not industrial mining charges delivered by cargo containers. The Krillian formation shuddered as dozens of vessels took damage from attacks they hadn't detected until the moment of impact. Elena could see their tactical computers scrambling to recalculate threat assessments, trying to understand how cargo debris had become weapons. Phase 3, Elena announced. Throughout the system, civilian ships that had been hiding among planets, moons, and asteroid fields suddenly activated engines and weapon systems that definitely hadn't been part of their original specifications. Agricultural vessels began spraying clouds of metallic chaff that interfered with Krillian sensors while also releasing genetically modified crop spores that attacked the biomechanical components of enemy hulls. Passenger liners launched waves of escape pods that broadcast false sensor signatures, making individual ships appear to be entire fleets. Even luxury yachts joined the attack, their entertainment systems repurposed into electronic warfare platforms that flooded Krillian communication networks with everything from human music to random data streams designed to overload their translation protocols. Elena watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction as the Krillian formation began to break apart. Their adaptive systems were trying to respond to dozens of different attack types simultaneously, many of which operated outside the parameters of conventional warfare. Biomechanical hulls that could regenerate damage from energy weapons were struggling to cope with genetically engineered spores. Shield systems that could adapt to any known weapon frequency were failing against agricultural sprayers and mining equipment. Admiral, Commander Zhang called out, the Krillian command ship is attempting to restore formation order. They're pulling back toward the Maelstrom Gate. Elena felt a cold smile cross her face. Perfect. Signal Dr. Kumar. Phase 4 is a go. At 7 precisely calculated points around the Maelstrom Gate's periphery, human ships that had been disguised as space debris suddenly activated nuclear weapons that had been positioned over the past 3 days. The timing had to be perfect, 7 simultaneous detonations across a volume of space measured in light minutes, each explosion calculated to destabilize the gravitational forces that kept the gate stable. Elena watched the sensors as space itself began to twist around the Maelstrom Gate. The gravitational anomaly that had allowed faster-than-light travel for thousands of years was collapsing into something far more dangerous. Reality was bending in ways that her instruments could barely measure, creating a localized distortion that would consume anything within 1,000,000 kilometers. Krillian fleet is detecting the gravitational disturbance, Commander Zhang reported. They're attempting to withdraw, but... Admiral, they can't achieve safe distance in time. The collapse is accelerating beyond predicted parameters. Elena watched as 6,000 Krillian vessels, the most advanced military force in galactic history, found themselves trapped in a gravitational anomaly that was becoming a black hole. Their biomechanical technology, capable of adapting to any conventional threat, was powerless against the fundamental forces of spacetime itself. High Commander Zarethval is broadcasting on all frequencies, Commander Zhang announced. Let's hear it, Elena said. Zarethval's form appeared on the main display again, but this time the Krillian commander's biomechanical armor was showing signs of stress. Admiral Rodriguez. What have you done? Our long-range sensors indicate massive gravitational disturbance. This will destroy both our fleets. Elena looked at the alien commander with the same calm expression she'd maintained throughout the battle. Hi Commander, you came here to eliminate humanity from this war. We decided to eliminate you from this galaxy instead. The gate collapse will stabilize in approximately 30 minutes. I recommend you use that time to consider whether threatening human survival was worth the cost. You cannot be serious. This will trap your own vessels as well. Some of them, Elena agreed. The price of making sure that your empire learns an important lesson about my species. She turned to Commander Zhang. Signal all human vessels. Any ship that can achieve minimum safe distance has permission to attempt withdrawal. Anyone who can't make it to safe distance. Elena paused, looking around the bridge at her crew. Anyone who can't make it to safe distance should remember that sometimes the most important victory is the one that prevents your enemy from threatening your home again. Elena watched the tactical display as human ships throughout the system made their individual decisions. Some of the faster vessels, particularly the converted civilian craft on the outer edges of the system, began accelerating toward safe distance. Others, including most of the military fleet, were too close to the collapsing gate to escape. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice came through the communication system. The TSS Relentless reports that we could achieve safe distance if we abandon the civilian ships that are still evacuating personnel from the mining platforms. Elena considered this for perhaps a second. Negative, Captain. We don't leave people behind. That's not who we are. Understood, Admiral. Elena turned back to the display showing High Commander Zarethval. High Commander, you have approximately 25 minutes to broadcast a message to the Krillian Empire. I suggest you tell them that humanity is no longer available for elimination. Tell them that any future attempts to threaten human worlds will be met with responses that operate outside conventional military doctrine. Tell them that humans don't just fight wars, we rewrite the fundamental rules of how wars are fought. Zarethval's form was flickering now as the gravitational distortions began affecting Krillian ship systems. Admiral, surely some arrangement can be reached. The Empire did not understand the full scope of human capabilities. Negotiations could. High Commander, Elena interrupted, the time for negotiations was before you brought 6,000 ships to eliminate my species. Now you get to explain to your empire why those 6,000 ships no longer exist, and why the sector of space you wanted to control is now permanently cut off from galactic civilization. Elena cut the transmission and addressed her bridge crew. People, we've got 20 minutes before the gate collapse reaches critical mass. Any last-minute impossible ideas for getting us out of this? Chief Petty Officer Williams looked up from his engineering station. Admiral, we could jettison everything that isn't essential and use the ship's emergency thrusters to negative, Chief, Elena said firmly. We're not running. We're going to use these 20 minutes to make sure the galaxy remembers what happened here. She opened a communication channel to all surviving human vessels. This is Admiral Rodriguez to all ships. We have accomplished our primary objective. The Krillian threat to Earth and the human colonies has been eliminated. The cost was higher than we hoped, but acceptable given what we prevented. Elena looked around her bridge, seeing the faces of people who had chosen to stand and fight when survival seemed impossible. In 20 minutes, this sector of space will be cut off from the rest of the galaxy for the next 50 years. Those of us who can't reach safe distance will be the first permanent human colonists of an isolated star system. We'll have the Krillian fleet for company, assuming any of them survive the gate collapse. She smiled that same unreasonable smile that had carried her through this entire impossible battle. People, we just proved that human stubbornness is more dangerous than superior technology. We showed the galaxy that threatening our extinction was a mistake that would cost them the most powerful fleet in galactic history. And we did it by turning garbage into weapons, civilians into soldiers, and impossible odds into inevitable victory. Elena looked at the countdown display showing 18 minutes until the Maelstrom Gate's collapse reached the point of no return. 18 minutes to show the galaxy that when humans fight for survival, we don't just win. We win in ways that change the fundamental nature of the conflict itself. 18 minutes to prove that sometimes, the most dangerous enemy you can face is the one who refuses to accept that they're supposed to lose. 57 years after the collapse of the Maelstrom Gate, Admiral Elena Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of the Terra Nova station, watching as the first Galactic Council exploration vessel emerged from the newly stabilized gravitational anomaly. She was 91 years old now, her hair silver and her face lined with decades of hard decisions, but her eyes still held the same unreasonable determination that had carried humanity through the impossible battle that changed the galaxy. The station around her was a monument to human adaptability. Built from the salvaged remains of Krillian vessels and powered by technology that combined human engineering with alien science, Terra Nova had become the capital of what the isolated sector's inhabitants had come to call the Human Autonomy Zone. 57 years of isolation had not made humanity weaker, it had made them stranger, more innovative, and considerably more dangerous than when the galaxy had last seen them. Admiral, Captain Sarah Chen approached from behind. She was Elena's successor as commander of the Human Defense Fleet, though that fleet now bore little resemblance to the desperate collection of ships that had fought at the Maelstrom Gate decades ago. The Galactic Council vessel is requesting permission to dock. They're broadcasting diplomatic credentials. Elena smiled, the expression carrying memories of countless impossible victories. Of course they are. After 57 years of wondering what happened to us, they're probably very curious about what they're going to find. She turned from the observation window and walked through corridors that told the story of humanity's isolation in metal and ceramic. The walls were lined with memorial plaques commemorating the thousands who had died in the gate collapse, but they were also decorated with artwork that celebrated the new civilization that had emerged from that sacrifice. Paintings and sculptures created by humans who had never seen Earth, who had been born in the strange space between galaxies where the collapsed gate had left them. Status of our current fleet, Captain? Captain Chen activated a holographic display that showed the deployment of human vessels throughout the isolated sector. 67 major vessels, Admiral, plus approximately 300 smaller craft. All of them constructed using hybrid human Krillian technology. Elena studied the display with satisfaction. The ships shown were unlike anything that had existed before the gate collapse, sleek vessels that combined human engineering practicality with Krillian biomechanical adaptation. They were living ships in the truest sense, capable of repairing themselves, adapting to new threats, and evolving their capabilities over time. Crew composition? Mixed human Krillian on 40% of vessels, pure human on the remainder. The integration program has exceeded all projected success rates. Elena nodded. That had been perhaps the most unexpected development of their isolation, the discovery that humans and Krillians, when forced to cooperate for survival, had created something neither species could have achieved alone. The Krillians who had survived the gate collapse had initially been prisoners, then reluctant allies, and eventually partners in building a new kind of civilization. Admiral, Captain Chen continued, there's something else you should know about our visitors. The Council vessel is flying the banner of the Terran Diplomatic Service. Elena's eyebrows rose. Earth has a diplomatic service now? Apparently. And, according to their preliminary transmissions, they're here to negotiate humanity's reintegration into galactic civilization. Elena felt a laugh building in her chest. Reintegration. As if we were refugees waiting to be rescued. She looked out at the stars that had been humanity's prison and their salvation for over half a century. I wonder if they realize what they're actually dealing with. The walk to the docking bay took them through the heart of Terra Nova Station, past laboratories where human and Krillian scientists worked together on projects that would have been impossible for either species alone. They passed training facilities where young humans learned to interface directly with biomechanical technology, and workshops where Krillian engineers studied human approaches to creative problem-solving. The docking bay itself was a testament to the hybrid civilization that isolation had created. The architecture was distinctly human in its functionality, but incorporated Krillian biomechanical elements that made the entire structure feel alive. Walls that could reconfigure themselves for different purposes, atmospheric systems that adapted in real time to the needs of different species, and gravity fields that could be adjusted for optimal comfort regardless of a visitor's physiology. The Galactic Council vessel that had docked was impressive by the standards Elena remembered from 57 years ago. A kilometer-long diplomatic cruiser with elegant lines and sophisticated technology. But, compared to what humanity had built during their isolation, it looked almost quaint. Ambassador Dr. Patricia Chen Okafor emerged from the council vessel with a small diplomatic party. Elena recognized the surname Captain Chen's daughter, who had been evacuated to Earth just before the gate collapse. She was a striking woman in her 50s, dressed in formal diplomatic attire that managed to look both professional and approachably human. Admiral Rodriguez, Dr. Chen Okafor said as she approached, "It's an honor to meet the woman who saved our species." Elena shook the ambassador's hand, noting the slight tremor that indicated nervousness. Dr. Chen Okafor. Though I should point out that we didn't save our species by running away. We saved it by refusing to accept elimination. Yes, the ambassador said, Earth has studied the records of what happened here. The complete destruction of the Krillian invasion fleet, the strategic use of the gate collapse, the successful defense against impossible odds. It's become required study at all military academies. Elena led the diplomatic party through the station, noting how their eyes widened as they took in the hybrid technology and the casual integration of human and Krillian personnel. I imagine there have been some changes in the galaxy since we've been gone. Significant changes, Dr. Chen Okafor confirmed. The destruction of the Krillian main fleet shifted the balance of power throughout this entire spiral arm. The Zephyrian coalition expanded their territory by 40%. Several previously neutral species joined the Galactic Council for protection. And Earth. She paused. Earth became the center of intensive military study as everyone tried to understand how humanity had accomplished the impossible. They reached the station's main conference room, where Elena had arranged for a demonstration that she thought the ambassador would find educational. The room itself was impressive, a circular chamber with a transparent aluminum dome that provided a view of the binary stars and the strange aurora effects created by the stabilized gate. But what drew immediate attention were the dozen figures seated around the conference table. 6 humans and 6 Krillians, working together on what appeared to be a complex engineering project. The humans were using their species' gift for creative problem-solving and adaptive thinking, while the Krillians contributed their advanced understanding of biomechanical systems and mathematical precision. The result was a level of collaboration that produced innovations neither species could have achieved independently. Dr. Chen Okafor, Elena said, I'd like you to meet the real achievement of the past 57 years. Not the military victories or the technological advances, but the discovery that humans and Krillians, when they stop trying to eliminate each other, make an extraordinarily effective team. One of the Krillians at the table, Commander Vashti, who had been Zareth Val's chief science officer before the gate collapse, looked up from the project they were working on. Ambassador Chen Okafor, welcome to the Human Autonomy Zone. We trust your journey through the new gate was comfortable? Dr. Chen Okafor stared at the Krillian, clearly struggling to process what she was seeing. You're working together. More than that, Elena said. They're building something together that neither species could build alone. Show her, Vashti. The Krillian activated a holographic display that showed the schematic for what appeared to be a starship, but unlike any design Elena had ever seen before the gate collapse. The vessel combined human engineering principles with Krillian biomechanical technology in ways that created capabilities neither species had possessed independently. This is the prototype for our new exploration vessel, Vashti explained. It combines human adaptability and creative problem-solving with Krillian technological sophistication. The result is a ship that can literally evolve its capabilities in response to new challenges. Dr. Chen Okafor studied the schematic with growing amazement. This is beyond anything in current Galactic Council technology. Elena settled into a chair at the conference table. Dr. Chen Okafor, I think it's time we discussed why you're really here. Because I don't think this is about reintegrating refugees into galactic civilization. The ambassador took a breath, and Elena could see her shifting from diplomatic pleasantries to serious negotiation. Admiral, you're correct. The situation in the galaxy has become unstable. The destruction of the Krillian fleet created a power vacuum that various factions have been trying to fill. There have been 3 major wars and dozens of smaller conflicts. The Galactic Council is facing challenges that conventional military strategy can't address. And they remembered that humans specialize in unconventional solutions, Elena said. Earth has become the de facto center of innovative military doctrine. Human officers are serving as advisors to species throughout the galaxy. But there's a limit to what we can accomplish using pre-isolation human knowledge. The galaxy needs. She gestured around the conference room, this. Whatever you've become during your isolation. Elena looked around the table at the faces of humans and Krillians who had spent decades learning to work together, to think together, to solve problems that neither species could have tackled alone. They represented something new in galactic civilization, a hybrid culture that combined the best aspects of both species while eliminating the limitations that had kept them as enemies. What exactly is the Council proposing? Elena asked. Full recognition of the human autonomy zone as a sovereign entity within the Galactic Council framework. Permanent council seats for both human and Krillian representatives from this sector. Access to galactic markets and diplomatic relations. In exchange, the Council would like to establish a joint military academy here, where officers from throughout the galaxy could study innovative strategic thinking. Elena considered the proposal. 57 years ago, humanity had been dismissed as a minor species that would be quickly eliminated from galactic affairs. Now they were being invited to help teach the galaxy how to fight wars that couldn't be won through conventional means. There's one thing you need to understand, Dr. Chinokafor, Elena said finally. We're not the same humans who were trapped here 57 years ago. Isolation didn't make us weaker or more desperate to rejoin galactic civilization. It made us something new. We've learned that sometimes the best solution to an impossible problem is to reject the fundamental assumptions that make the problem seem impossible. She stood up and walked to the transparent dome, looking out at the stars that had witnessed humanity's greatest victory and greatest transformation. The galaxy wants to learn from us how to win impossible wars. But what we've really learned is how to eliminate the need for those wars entirely. When humans and Krillians stopped seeing each other as enemies and started seeing each other as partners, we discovered that most conflicts are based on assumptions that don't have to be true. Elena turned back to the ambassador. We'll accept the Council's proposal, but with one modification. The joint military academy you want to establish here won't just teach innovative strategy. It will teach collaborative strategy, how to turn enemies into allies, how to solve problems by changing the nature of the problems themselves, how to win wars by making them unnecessary. Dr. Chinokafor looked around the conference room at the humans and Krillians working together on projects that neither species could have imagined alone. Admiral, what you're proposing would change the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. Elena smiled, that same unreasonable smile that had carried humanity through 57 years of impossible challenges. Dr. Chinokafor, changing the fundamental nature of things is what humans do. We look at the way things are and ask why they can't be different. We take systems that everyone believes are permanent and show that they're just habits that can be broken. She looked around the conference table one more time, seeing in the faces of her colleagues the future that humanity and their former enemies had built together. 57 years ago, the galaxy tried to eliminate humanity because they thought we were a threat to the established order. They were right. We are a threat to the established order, but not because we destroy it. Because we improve it. Because we refuse to accept that things have to stay the way they've always been. Elena walked back to her chair and settled into it with the satisfaction of someone who had spent decades turning impossible situations into unexpected opportunities. Tell the Galactic Council that the Human Autonomy Zone accepts their proposal. But also tell them that when they send students to learn from us, they shouldn't expect to get back the same people they sent. Because the most important thing we've learned in 57 years of isolation is that the most powerful weapon in the universe isn't superior technology or overwhelming force. She looked directly at Dr. Chinokafor. The most powerful weapon is the refusal to accept that enemies have to remain enemies forever. And once you've learned that lesson, everything else becomes possible.